They blocked the trucker on the interstate. What they didn't know was that she was a lieutenant with highway intelligence. The desert heat sent shimmering waves rising from the asphalt, sticking to her rig's windshield. The leader of the blockade walked up, his face a mask of contempt. He said, "I suggest you turn around, lady. This road is closed." She just smiled, a cold grin that didn't reach her eyes, and slowly pulled a badge from the console. When the man saw the federal emblem, his arrogant smirk vanished instantly. If you're already feeling the tension in the air, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss how this story unfolds. Comment below with the city you're watching from and the word justice if you think they messed with the wrong woman. Lieutenant Sarah Jenkins, 35, had been undercover for 3 months. To the world, she was just another independent trucker, hauling goods across America's vast network of highways. Her cherry-red Peterbilt 389 wasn't just any truck. It was a state-of-the-art mobile surveillance unit, hidden under a layer of road dust and grime. On this Tuesday afternoon, she was on I-40, a vital artery cutting through the Arizona desert, hauling a supposedly routine shipment of electronics to California. But the cargo was just a pretext. Sarah's real mission was to investigate a group of truckers who had been organizing illegal blockades, suspected of being tied to an extortion and cargo theft ring. The central problem materialized right in front of her, a makeshift roadblock with 3 semis parked sideways and a dozen men, all with the hard look of people who've spent their lives on the road. They weren't mere protesters. Their faces were grim, their movements coordinated. What was at stake wasn't just the delivery of a shipment, but the integrity of a classified federal operation. If her cover was blown here, in the middle of nowhere, with no communication and no immediate backup, the consequences would be disastrous. The tension was palpable. The air smelled of diesel and danger. She knew she had to control the situation without revealing her true capabilities. The search for the truth about this group would bring her face to face with their leader, a man known only as Mitch. Her intel suggested he was the architect of this chaos, a charismatic but ruthless figure who preyed on the frustrations of other drivers. Her journey would force her to untangle a web of lies that reached far higher than a simple highway protest, connecting to powerful figures who believed they were above the law. This lonely stretch of asphalt was about to become a battleground, but could one woman, alone in the desert, truly dismantle a network of corruption rooted deep in the nation's highways? The sun beat down relentlessly on the scene. Beyond her truck, a line of cars and other rigs was already forming, a captive audience to the unfolding drama. Drivers peered out of their windows, a mix of fear and frustration in their eyes. Mitch's men patrolled the line, their posture aggressive, their presence a clear threat to anyone who might think of challenging them. Sarah's eyes scanned everything, not as a trucker, but as a trained officer. She noted the makes of the blocking trucks, 2 Kenworths and a battered Freightliner. She logged the faces of the men, memorizing tattoos, scars, and expressions. This wasn't a spontaneous protest. It was organized. Her mind briefly flashed back to her last briefing with her superior, Commander Evans. He had been blunt. "Stay dark, Jenkins. These guys are getting desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. Your job is to gather intel, not to be a hero." His words echoed in her cab now, a stark reminder of the line she had to walk. Her truck, Big Red, was her only partner out here, its hidden cameras and listening devices silently recording every detail. To enrich the scene with the specific culture of the US, Sarah could hear the fragmented chatter on her CB radio. The official channels were a mess of confused calls, but on the informal channels used by truckers, the language was different. "We got a bear trap on the 40 westbound," one voice crackled, using slang for a police trap, but in this case, misidentifying the situation. "Looks like the angry hornets are at it again," another said, giving the rogue group a nickname. This was the world she had immersed herself in, a subculture with its own rules and language. The antagonist, Mitch, asserted his control. He climbed onto the flatbed of one of the trucks and addressed the trap drivers through a megaphone. He wasn't just a brute. He was charismatic in a rough-hewn way. He spoke of unfair freight rates, of corporate giants like Titan Logistics, squeezing the life out of independent owner-operators, of a system that had forgotten them. His speech was a potent cocktail of genuine grievance and veiled menace. "We're just fighting for our livelihood," he boomed, "a livelihood that's been stolen from us." For a moment, Sarah could see how he had rallied these men to his cause. He was giving their anger a target. Just then, a single state trooper car pulled up, lights flashing. A young, nervous-looking officer, whose name tag read Riley, stepped out. He was alone, clearly not expecting a situation of this magnitude. He tried to project authority. "All right, folks, let's clear the road. Whatever the problem is, we can talk about it." Mitch's men simply laughed. Two of the larger blockers stepped forward, crossing their arms. Mitch looked down from the flatbed and said, "Son, you're a little outnumbered here. I suggest you just sit tight in your car and wait. We'll be done when we're done." Officer Riley was visibly intimidated, his hand hovering near his sidearm. He was out of his depth, a lone symbol of the law in a place where the law had just been suspended. He retreated to his car to call for backup, becoming an unwilling spectator and a potential liability Sarah would now have to manage. The conflict began to simmer and intensify. With Officer Riley neutralized in his car, Mitch's men grew bolder. The initial tension gave way to a hostile, almost festive atmosphere among the blockers. They shared coffee and jeers, their confidence swelling with every passing minute that they controlled a federal highway. The standoff was dragging on, and the risk of it spiraling out of control increased. Sarah knew that time was not on her side. The longer this went on, the more likely it was that someone would get hurt or that her own cover would be compromised. The breaking point for her inaction came when one of Mitch's men, a burly man she'd mentally tagged as Billy, decided to have some fun. He sauntered over to a minivan where an elderly couple sat, their faces pale with fear. He started banging on their window, yelling, "What's the matter, Grandpa? In a hurry to get to the bingo game." The woman screamed, and the man looked like he was about to have a heart attack. That was the line. Sarah killed her engine, the sudden silence from her truck drawing a few glances. She opened her door and swung down from the cab with a practiced ease that belied her simple trucker persona. She didn't march over aggressively. Instead, she walked with a calm, deliberate pace directly toward the minivan. She ignored Billy at first, making eye contact with the elderly man inside and giving him a short, reassuring nod. Then she turned to Billy. Her voice was low, devoid of anger, but carrying an unmistakable edge of authority. "Billy," she said. The man stopped his taunts, surprised that she knew his name. She'd overheard another blocker say it an hour ago. "Your rig's leaking oil." A pretty steady drip from the pan. "You might want to check that before your whole engine block seizes up on you." The statement was so unexpected, so mundane, that it completely disarmed him. It wasn't a threat. It was a piece of practical advice. But the way she said it, the quiet confidence, the detailed observation, threw him off balance. He glanced back nervously at his truck. Sarah had just demonstrated that she saw everything, that she was not intimidated, and that she operated on a different level. Without another word, Billy grumbled something under his breath and walked away to check his truck. The confrontation diffused. Officer Riley watched the entire exchange from his patrol car, his mouth slightly agape. He had been prepared for a violent showdown, but he'd just witnessed a masterclass in psychological de-escalation. He saw her as something more than a simple trucker now. He got out of his car and approached her discreetly while the attention was elsewhere. "That was impressive," he said in a low voice. "What's your play here?" "Just a trucker trying to get by, officer," she replied, maintaining her cover, but her eyes told him they were on the same side. The dynamic of the conflict shifted dramatically just moments later. Mitch, who had been observing from his perch on the flatbed, received a phone call. Sarah watched him closely. His posture straightened. The casual arrogance on his face was replaced by a sharp, predatory focus. He ended the call and his eyes locked directly onto her Peterbilt. The look on his face was no longer about protest. It was about acquisition. The orders had clearly changed. It was no longer about blocking the road. It was about taking her truck. The tension ratcheted up instantly from a hostile protest to an impending hijacking. Sarah felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. The real fight was about to begin. Sarah needed to act, but she also needed information. Slipping back into her cab under the pretext of getting a water bottle, she activated a secure, short-range communication channel, a feature of Big Red that was strictly off-limits, except in extreme emergencies. This was one. "Evans, do you copy?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her commander's voice came back instantly, tinny and tense. "Jenkins, your tracker just went static for 2 minutes. Report. The Hornets have blocked I-40, at least a dozen hostiles led by Mitch. They have a state trooper pinned down, but the situation's changed. Mitch just got a call. His focus is now my rig. It feels like the mission is compromised." There was a pause. "It is," Evans said, his voice grim. "The intel was good, but someone talked. Titan Logistics knows we have the evidence against them. They just don't know it's you. That cargo you're hauling isn't electronics, Sarah. It's a server rack. It holds their entire off-the-books accounting system. Proof of fraud, extortion, the works. It's the evidence that can bring the whole company down." The subplot was now fused with the main conflict. Her truck wasn't just a target. It was the prize. "There's more," Evans continued, his words coming faster. "Titan has dispatched their own security team to the location. They're pros, ex-military. They're operating under the guise of a private firm hired by the state to help clear disruptive protests. They'll be there in under an hour. You need to hold them off until official backup arrives, but that's at least 90 minutes out." The pressure of a ticking clock descended on the scene. Sarah now had to handle two sets of enemies: the disorganized but dangerous truckers in front of her, and the professional mercenaries on their way. She ended the communication and looked over at Officer Riley, who was watching her with a mixture of hope and fear. She made a decision. She walked over to him, keeping her posture non-threatening. "Officer," she began, her voice low, "the men blocking this road are a symptom. The disease is coming. I need you to be my eyes and ears. Get on your radio to dispatch. Don't declare an officer in distress. Tell them you have a multi-vehicle pileup with potential hazmat. Use code 37H. It's an old highway patrol code, but it'll get the right people listening without tipping off anyone monitoring the public channels. Report the number of hostiles, their positions, and any visible weapons. You are a state trooper. You are the law here. Act like it." Her words were a direct order, but also a lifeline. She was giving him a purpose, a way to reclaim his authority. He stared at her for a second, then a look of steely resolve hardened his young face. He nodded, turned, and walked back to his car with a newfound confidence. The relationship had been forged. He was no longer a liability, but her first line of defense. The stage was set, with new complexities and a rapidly approaching deadline that promised to bring everything to a violent head. The turning point came faster than Sarah expected. Mitch, emboldened by his phone call, slid down from the flatbed. He gathered a core group of 4 of his most loyal men, including Billy, who looked eager to redeem himself after being put in his place. They started walking towards Sarah's truck, their intentions clear and hostile. They weren't asking anymore. "All right, lady, fun's over," Mitch announced, his voice carrying across the pavement. "We need to borrow your rig. Just hand over the keys." Sarah stood her ground in front of her truck's grill, her arms crossed. "This truck isn't going anywhere," she said, her voice steady. Mitch laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "I don't think you're in a position to argue." He nodded to his men. "Get her." 2 of them moved to flank her while another 2 went for the passenger door. The man who reached her first was a big, bearded driver who lunged to grab her arm. It was the last mistake he would make. In the blink of an eye, the helpless trucker vanished. Sarah reacted with pure, honed instinct. As his hand closed on her forearm, she pivoted on the ball of her foot, using his own momentum against him. Her left hand clamped down on his wrist, while her right forearm shot up under his elbow, hyperextending the joint. The man screamed as his arm bent in a way it was never meant to. Without pausing, Sarah spun, driving her elbow into his ribs. He collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. The other blocker, coming from her side, froze for a half-second in disbelief. That was all the time she needed. She lunged forward, not at him, but at the side of her truck, using the fuel tank as a step to launch herself upward. She kicked off the side of the cab, twisting in mid-air and slamming both boots into the man's chest. He flew backward and crumpled to the asphalt. Meanwhile, the other 2 had managed to pry open the trailer door. "Mitch, you gotta see this," one of them yelled. Mitch, his face a mask of shock from watching his men be taken down, ran to the back of the trailer. He peered inside, and his blood ran cold. He had been expecting pallets of electronics, something he could fence easily. Instead, in the center of the vast empty trailer, was a single matte black military-grade crate bolted directly to the floor. It was adorned not with shipping labels, but with bright yellow biohazard symbols and stark red warnings that read, "Federal property, unlawful entry punishable by imprisonment." It was a complete bluff. The servers were hidden in a secret compartment in the cab, but it was the most convincing bluff in the world. The revelation hit Mitch like a physical blow. This wasn't a random score. This was a federal shipment. He had just gone from leading an illegal protest to attempting to hijack property of the US government. Sarah landed softly on her feet, brushing dust from her jeans. She stood between the two downed men, her breathing even, her stance perfectly balanced. She looked at Mitch, and her eyes were like chips of ice. The disguise was gone. Every line of her body now screamed training, discipline, and danger. The power dynamic on that highway had not just shifted, it had been completely inverted. She was no longer the victim. She was the authority, and they had just committed a very, very serious crime. The consequences of the turning point rippled through the crowd of blockers instantly. The sound of the man's arm bending the wrong way, the sight of another flying through the air, and the chilling reveal inside the trailer sent a wave of panic through the assembled truckers. This had escalated far beyond a simple protest over freight rates. The men on the periphery, the ones who had been drawn in by Mitch's promises, began to back away slowly. Their faces, once angry and defiant, were now pale with fear. They wanted no part of this. They uncoupled their trucks, jumped in their cabs, and started to maneuver their way out, abandoning the blockade. Mitch stood frozen, staring from the ominous crate in the trailer to the woman who was clearly not a trucker. His world had tilted on its axis. The phone call, the tip about a valuable load, it was all a setup. He wasn't a rebel leader, he was a pawn, a disposable tool used by Titan Logistics to stop a federal investigation. He had been sent to do their dirty work, to take the fall. His righteous anger toward a corrupt system curdled into the bitter taste of betrayal. He had been played by the very people he claimed to be fighting against. From his car, Officer Riley had witnessed the entire explosive event. He had his sidearm drawn, but he was frozen in professional awe. He had seen bar fights and traffic stops go bad, but he had never seen that kind of focused, brutal efficiency. He finally understood. Sarah wasn't just helping him, she was in charge. His hesitation vanished, replaced by a surge of adrenaline. He was no longer a rookie cop in over his head. He was back up for a federal agent. He got on his radio, his voice now firm and clear. Dispatch, disregard 37H. Officer Riley declaring a 1099. Officer needs assistance, urgent. I am on I-40, mile marker 72. We have a confirmed federal agent in contact with multiple armed hostiles. Repeat, federal agent in contact. Sarah didn't waste the chaos. She seized the momentum. She strode forward, her gaze sweeping over Mitch's remaining loyalists, who were now looking at their leader for answers he didn't have. You have two choices right now. Sarah's voice cut through the air, sharp and commanding. You can be accomplices to an attack on a federal officer and the theft of government property. You will be hunted, and you will be caught. Your lives as you know them will be over. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Or, she continued, her tone shifting slightly, you can become witnesses. Put your hands on your heads, get on the ground, and you will have the chance to tell your side of the story. You were misled by him, she pointed at Mitch, and used by a corporation that threw you away. This is your only chance to be on the right side of this. She was using their own narrative of victimhood against their leader, offering them an exit ramp from the road to prison. It worked. One by one, then in a flood, Mitch's men dropped to their knees, putting their hands on their heads. They had been following a protest leader. They had no intention of dying for a pawn. In less than 2 minutes, Sarah had dismantled the entire blockade from the inside, using fear, psychology, and the undeniable truth of her revealed identity. The only one left standing was Mitch, alone and surrounded by the ruins of his rebellion. Just as the last of Mitch's men surrendered, a new threat appeared on the horizon. 3 black, unmarked SUVs came speeding down the highway from the east, ignoring the line of traffic and driving on the shoulder. They pulled to a stop 100 yards from the scene, forming a clean, tactical line. The doors opened, and 8 men dressed in black tactical gear, armed with carbines, stepped out. They moved with a discipline that made Mitch's group look like amateurs. The Titan Logistics security team had arrived. This was the new challenge, a professional threat that couldn't be dismantled with psychology. The leader, a tall man with a cold, expressionless face, stepped forward. "State Trooper," he called out to Riley, his voice amplified by a small speaker on his vest. "We're private contractors hired by the state to resolve this situation. Stand down and let us take command." This was the moment of truth for Sarah. Her transformation had to be complete. She couldn't be a lone operative anymore. She had to be a commander. She pointed at two of the surrendered truckers who were nearest to their rigs. "For you two, get your trucks and form a V right here. Point the noses out," she ordered. They scrambled to obey. To Riley she yelled, "Riley, get on the PA. Tell them this is a federal crime scene under my authority. Tell them any advancement will be met with force." Sarah's growth was visible in every action. She was no longer just reacting. She was commanding the battlefield. She directed the truckers, people who had been her enemies minutes before, to move their rigs, creating a makeshift fortress out of 18-wheelers. The V formation created a choke point, forcing the Titan team into a narrow field of fire if it came to that. She had them angle the truck's mirrors, using the sun to create a glare that would partially blind the approaching team. Her focus was absolute. It was no longer just about protecting the evidence. It was about protecting the people caught in the middle. The frightened civilian drivers still trapped behind the scene, the surrendered truckers who were now her responsibility, and the rookie cop who had placed his faith in her. Her actions were swift and decisive, a torrent of commands that turned chaos into a structured defense. The Titan leader was taken aback by the organized resistance. He expected to roll over a single state trooper and a bunch of disorganized truckers. He didn't expect a fortified position commanded by someone who clearly knew what they were doing. He tried a different tactic. "We are authorized to use lethal force to protect corporate assets," he yelled. Sarah stepped into the open, positioning herself behind the engine block of a Kenworth, her sidearm in a low-ready position. Her voice, unamplified, carried with chilling clarity. "And I am a federal officer protecting evidence in a racketeering investigation. Your company is the target of that investigation. Every man you have here is now part of a criminal conspiracy to obstruct justice. The first man who takes one more step will be the lead defendant in a federal case that will put him away for 30 years. She had changed the game again. She wasn't just a physical threat. She was a legal one. She turned their authority into a criminal liability. The mercenaries paused. They were paid well, but not well enough to trade their freedom for a corporation that was already sinking. Sarah had overcome the physical threat of the blockade and was now facing down a corporate army. Her personal growth demonstrated not by a single act of violence, but by her ability to command, to strategize, and to weaponize the law itself. The tense standoff stretched into a brutal war of nerves under the desert sun. The Titan mercenaries, clearly professional, did not launch a reckless, immediate assault. They began to probe the defenses. A drone, a black, wasp-like machine, lifted off from behind their SUVs and buzzed towards the blockade, seeking to map out the positions Sarah had established. "Riley, can you shoot it down?" Sarah asked over their discreet radio channel. "Negative," Riley responded, his voice steady. He was all business now. "My service pistol won't reach that accurately. They'd just send another." "Then give them something else to look at," Sarah ordered. She turned to one of the truckers who had surrendered, but was now following her commands. "You, in the blue Freightliner, on my signal, hit your air horn and don't stop. You in the Mac, flash your high beams on and off, aim for their leader." The sudden, deafening blast of the air horn and the disorienting strobing of the high beams created a sensory overload, momentarily distracting the mercenaries and drawing the drone's attention. It was a classic misdirection play. While they were focused on the noise and lights, Sarah addressed Mitch, who was still standing by his rig, looking like a defeated king. The time for complex negotiation was over. Sarah's words were sharp and direct. "Mitch, look at them. They're the ones who put you out of business. They're the ones who fed you the lie about my cargo to get you to do their dirty work. They see you as trash. Right now, you're looking at life in prison for what you've already done." She let him absorb the harsh reality. "But there's one other path. They think this is just my truck. They don't know I have allies. Help me hold this line until my backup arrives, and I will personally testify that you provided material assistance to a federal agent during an armed confrontation. It won't make you a free man, but it's the only chance you have to save yourself from dying in a cage. You get revenge on Titan and a shot at a real future. Your choice. Make it now." There was no more persuasion, just a stark, binary choice. The secondary subplot of Mitch's rebellion was coming to its resolution. He looked from Sarah's unyielding face to the cold professional killers hired by the company that had destroyed his life. He saw the drone repositioning. He saw the mercenaries starting to spread out in a classic flanking maneuver. His rage, which had been aimless for so long, finally found its true target. He didn't say a word. He just climbed into the cab of his own truck, fired up the massive diesel engine, and its roar was his answer. The tension on the highway ratcheted up to an unbearable level. It was no longer a standoff. The mercenaries were advancing, and Sarah's small, improvised army was preparing for the inevitable clash. The last moments of calm before the storm were over. Part 9. 824 words. The assault began with brutal efficiency. The Titan team leader barked an order, and his men advanced, using their SUVs for cover as they moved up. They weren't running. They were moving in a disciplined, coordinated fashion, two teams flanking from the sides, while a central group laid down suppressing fire, not with live rounds yet, but with high-powered tear gas launchers. Canisters arced through the air, landing between the trucks and erupting in clouds of acrid smoke. "Stay in your cabs. Windows up. Recirculate the air," Sarah yelled, her own eyes already stinging. She had anticipated this. Officer Riley, positioned safely behind the engine block of a large truck, returned fire with his sidearm, not aiming to hit, but to force them to keep their heads down, to disrupt their perfect advance. The crack of his pistol was a defiant answer to the thump-thump of the gas launchers. The climax was a symphony of industrial chaos. On Sarah's command, the truckers she deputized began blaring their horns in unison, a disorienting wall of sound. They flicked their high beams on and off, creating a blinding, chaotic light show that made it difficult for the mercenaries to aim or coordinate. Mitch proved her gamble on him was worth it. As the right flank team tried to find a gap between the trucks, he slammed his rig into gear. With a roar of its engine, his 18-wheeler lurched forward, not to escape but to pivot, swinging its massive trailer like a wrecking ball and closing the gap. The mercenaries scattered, their path blocked by 40 tons of steel. It was a crude but brutally effective maneuver. The Titan leader, seeing his flanking plan thwarted, became desperate. Real backup would be arriving any minute. He ordered his men to converge on the center, to breach the trailer at all costs. "Forget the woman, get the crate!" he screamed over the noise. This was the moment Sarah had been waiting for. The mercenaries, believing their prize was just a few feet away, charged forward into the V-shaped choke point, right into the kill zone. They swarmed the back of Sarah's trailer, planting breaching charges on the doors. Just as the leader was about to give the detonation order, Sarah's voice cut through the air, broadcast from the powerful PA system on Riley's patrol car. "Stand down, gentlemen. It's over." The Titan leader spun around, searching for her. "It's over when I say it is." "No, it's really over," Sarah's voice continued, calm and clear. "The crate is a decoy. It's filled with sandbags and a GPS tracker. A lovely touch, I think. The real server, the one with all of your boss's dirty secrets. It's not in the trailer, it's in a hidden compartment in my cab, and for the last 72 minutes, ever since you showed up, it has been actively broadcasting every byte of data to a secure federal cloud server. The upload completed 5 minutes ago." A deathly silence fell over the scene, broken only by the hum of diesel engines. The mercenaries froze, their faces a mixture of confusion and horror. "But that's not all," Sarah's voice continued, twisting the knife. "The entire event, from your illegal approach to your threats to your armed assault with chemical agents to your attempt to breach this trailer, has been recorded. Multiple cameras, high-fidelity audio. The United States Attorney's Office has been watching a live stream for the last half hour. They found it very compelling. Her transformation was absolute. She stepped out from behind cover, unarmed, her hands empty. She had won, not by outfighting them, but by outthinking them at every single turn. Her final act of revenge wasn't pulling a trigger. It was the crushing, systemic checkmate she had just delivered. She hadn't just defeated them. She had turned their own aggression into the evidence that would destroy them, and the corrupt corporation they worked for. Part 10, 604 words. The wail of distant sirens grew rapidly closer, a sound that was a death knell for the mercenaries and a song of relief for everyone else. Within moments, the scene was flooded with the flashing red and blue lights of dozens of state police cars and black federal SUVs. FBI tactical teams, clad in heavy gear, swarmed the area, securing the perimeter with an efficiency that made the Titan team look like amateurs. The mercenaries offered no resistance. Their leader dropped his carbine with a clatter, his face ashen. He and his men were swiftly cuffed and led away, their professional arrogance replaced by the blank stare of defeat. They were no longer soldiers of fortune, they were evidence in a massive federal case. Mitch climbed down from his cab, his face streaked with grime and tear gas residue. He looked at the chaos, then at Sarah, who was already debriefing a stern-faced FBI commander. He expected to be thrown to the ground, but Officer Riley approached him calmly. "You're under arrest, Mitch," Riley said, his voice firm but not unkind. As he clicked the handcuffs on, Sarah caught Mitch's eye and gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. The message was clear: "I will keep my word." Mitch's revenge was complete. He wouldn't walk away free, but he would watch the news from a cell and see the CEO of Titan Logistics, the man who had truly ruined him, being led away in cuffs. It was a bitter but satisfying form of justice. The final outcome unfolded exactly as Sarah had planned. The data she had secured, combined with the recording of the armed assault, was an open and shut case. News channels ran the story for weeks. Titan Logistics, CEO arrested in sweeping federal probe. The corrupt corporation crumbled under the weight of its own crimes, its stock plummeting to zero, its executives facing decades in prison. Sarah's revenge was not personal or bloody. It was systemic, total, and irrefutable. Officer Riley was commended for his bravery and his clear-headed actions during the crisis, earning both a medal and a promotion. For Sarah, there was no public ceremony. Her victory was quiet, known only to those within the agency. Standing on the side of the highway as the last of the emergency vehicles cleared out, she watched the sun begin to set, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and purple. The road was open again. The conclusion was emotionally satisfying, not because of the violence, but because the complex, messy situation had been resolved with intelligence, courage, and an unwavering commitment to a justice that the system often struggles to find on its own. Epilogue, 397 words. 6 months later, Corporal Riley stood in front of a class of fresh-faced state police cadets at the academy. A new stripe was on his sleeve, and a new confidence was in his voice. "The most powerful weapon you have," he told them, "is not your sidearm. It's your ability to think, to assess, and to control a situation before it controls you. The law is a shield, but your mind is the sword." He didn't mention Sarah by name, but for the rest of his career, every recruit who passed through his class would hear the story of the Angel of I-40, a mysterious trucker who single-handedly faced down an army and won. Thousands of miles away, in a sterile briefing room in Washington, D.C., Sarah stood before a large holographic display showing the schematics of a new vehicle. It looked like a standard delivery van, but the layers of the diagram revealed advanced surveillance technology. Commander Evans stood beside her, a rare smile on his face. "The Big Red program was a resounding success, Jenkins. The data you secured led to 17 federal indictments. Titan is finished. Let's talk about version 2.0. We're thinking smaller, faster, urban operations." Sarah looked from the schematic to the large window overlooking the capital's bustling streets. She saw trucks and vans moving through the city, each one a part of the nation's circulatory system, a system she had sworn to protect from the cancers hidden within. A small, determined smile touched her lips. Her work was not over. Justice isn't always found in a courtroom. Sometimes it's delivered on a lonely stretch of highway, in the cab of an 18-wheeler. And sometimes it's planned in a quiet room, ready to hit the road again. If you watched until the end, prove you're part of the crew and comment "I watched until the end" down below. Your presence and support are what allow us to keep bringing these intense stories to you. What did you think of Sarah's final move? Was it justice or was it revenge? Or maybe it was both? Leave your opinion in the comments. I read every single one of them. Your story and your thoughts are important to us. Thank you so much for dedicating your time to this journey. And now that you've reached the end, why not check out the video appearing on your end screen right now? It's another story about the wrong person being underestimated, and you won't want to miss it. Click on it, and I'll see you there.